Well, good day. My name is Kenneth Kahn, and I'm the Dean of the Monte Ahuja College of Business here at Cleveland State University. And on behalf of Cleveland State University and the Monte Ahuja College of Business, we are very pleased to be hosting the first Moments That Matter panel with the NRP group. Moments That Matter is a series of virtual fireside chats addressing key topics in mentoring and property management field. And today we're discussing how a new model of mentorship can drive personal growth in changing times. Moments That Matter builds on an existing collaboration between the NRP group and Cleveland State University. In August of 2019, NRP and Millennia Companies joined forces to make a $1.2 million gift to create the NRP and Millennia Center for Property Management within Cleveland State University's Monte Ahuja College of Business, thereby furthering and expanding efforts to partner tightly with industry. The program already has begun offering classes and will include an internship program and an applied research initiative, all of which is designed to meet considerable human capital needs of real estate and property management firms. The need for top management and property management continues to grow, and this program offers an ideal platform for engaged learning as we create a steady flow of talent for good paying jobs here in Northeast Ohio and throughout the country in multifamily real estate. At this point, I'm going to introduce our panel, especially our first panelist, and thus it's my honor to introduce President Harlan Sands, who is the president of Cleveland State University, who has served as president since 2018. Under Sands' leadership, the university has embraced the theme of engaged learning, which aims to transform lives, connect students to career opportunities, and contribute to the growth and vibrancy of Northeast Ohio. This reflects CSU's and President Sands' commitment to meeting the unique needs of our students by way of coaching and mentoring, which is what we're going to be talking about today. President Sands came to Cleveland State University from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, where he served as Wharton's Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer. Mr. Sands also has held academic leadership positions at the University of Louisville, University of Alabama, Birmingham, and Florida International University. Prior to his career in higher education, President Sands practiced law as an assistant public defender in Miami, Florida, where he litigated more than 50 trials in state and county courts representing indigent clients. He also served in the U.S. Navy for more than a decade, including service as a surface warfare officer on the USS Guam and several tours of duty as a naval intelligence officer. He received 2 Naval Commendation Medals during Operation Desert Storm. President Sands holds a BS in economics from the Wharton School of Business, an MBA with a major in finance from George Washington University, and a JD from George Mason University. President Sands, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Ken, and welcome to Cleveland State. And we're really lucky and proud to have you as our new dean of our College of Business. So really looking forward to working with you and you participating in this panel. And welcome to the first edition of Moments That Matter, a panel on the power of mentorship and how a new model of mentorship can drive personal growth in changing times. All the panelists are longtime mentors, and you'll hear more about their stories as we continue our discussion today. But it's my pleasure to have David Heller with us here today. And David, I am proud to consider a friend and colleague, someone who I've gotten to know fairly well since my arrival here in Cleveland in 2018. David is the president, CEO, and co-founder of the NRP Group. Over the past 25 years, he has helped create one of the largest multifamily development companies in the U.S. Since its founding in 1994, the NRP Group has developed more than 42,000 apartment homes, and they currently manage over 23,000 residential units across the nation. Something you may not know is David is also a CPA, and that can come in handy when you're running a big operation. So we have that in common, both of us with a pretty strong financial background. David's also deeply committed to community service. He holds several leadership positions in town across many civic organizations, and that's how I met David the first time we met. And the most notable right now, which is his position as chair of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, and he's going to be in that role for a while, and we're all very lucky to have him there. So David, welcome, and it's good to see you. And we, look forward to many, many years of partnership. But today's topic is mentorship.
Great to see you, and thank you. I'm really glad to be here with you. And if it's okay, I hear everyone referring to you as President Sands. If you don't mind me keeping it informal and referring to you as Harlan, my friend, with your permission, I would like to do that.
Absolutely, David, my friend. So we're good.
Excellent.
So tell us a little bit about NRP before we start, and give us a little bit of your background, which I think is kind of the underpinnings on how that shaped your view of mentorship.
Sure, and it's interesting because I grew up in Cleveland and graduated from Shaker Heights High School, and then after I graduated from the University of Michigan, moved to Chicago and worked for Arthur Andersen for 5 years before returning to Cleveland and working for the Townsend Group for 2 years. So part of my trajectory and part of growing up in Cleveland was that I had mentors, many which are still my mentors today, that really helped me guide me on my path to where I am today. And I couldn't be where I am today without those mentors. And in so many of those cases, Harlan, they were informal mentors, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later. But when I did come back to Cleveland, one of my mentors, Bobby Goldberg, who was the president of Ohio Savings, reached out to me and asked me if I would mentor his son, who had been in Cleveland and wanted to know if we would be interested in looking at building some single-family homes in the city of Cleveland. At that time, Mayor White was the mayor of Cleveland, and Cleveland was going through an incredible renaissance. And so Bobby, with his connections, introduced us to several people throughout the city of Cleveland. Terry Hamilton from the city of Cleveland, Walter Burks, who was a developer on the east side, and a guy named Al Scott. And Al Scott was a developer of low-income housing tax credit units throughout the state of Ohio, and he was a customer of the bank. And I met Al and thought that the work that he was doing was fascinating, and he met us, and he thought that we might bring dollars because we were associated with the bank. So you never know how those partnerships are going to be created, and that was how we originally got together. And then ultimately, I never imagined that it would turn into what it is today. But Bobby's son decided not to do it, not to work together after about, I would say, 1 week of exploring this. And so Al Scott and I became partners. We added a third partner a year later, Rick Bailey. Both of them I include in my mentors and people that have taught me a lot. They were both 14 years older than me and really guided my way in business. And so we grew a business. We were an affordable housing developer solely. That's all we did. We worked with nonprofits in urban neighborhoods, partnering on single-family lease purchase housing in neighborhoods in Cleveland like Glenville, Union Miles, Buckeye, and really transforming neighborhoods, developing those single-family homes. And then we grew by building multifamily. We had grown into senior housing, and then took the show on the road and went to North Carolina and then Michigan. And before you knew it, we had expanded to Texas, which became our largest growth market. And from 1994 until 2008, all we did was affordable housing. In 2008, and it's kind of foggy between 2008 and 2010 when we really exploded into the market rate and got us to the point where we've developed those 42,000 units. But it was really the growth in Texas that put us there, the market rate that we were able to grow to. But what was really important was we never abandoned the affordable housing. The affordable housing is at the core of what we do. It's the core of the I would call it the core of our core values, sort of the heart and soul of our company is repairing the world and doing that through affordable housing. The market rate's a lot of fun. It's a very big growth part of our business, but the passion, when you talk to somebody from NRP, it's really about the repairing of the world and the ability to do that through housing. So we had developed over 200 tax credit developments, and since 2010, we've developed over 60 market rate developments, which has just been some incredible growth. And we could not have done that without the A+ players at the NRP group, who are so committed to everything that we do. And everyone at NRP is really an A+ player. And I can talk about that, but it really ties into the mentorship and the philosophy and the way that we treat each other, the way that we interact with each other, and the way that we perform at a high level for everybody involved.
So talk a little bit, you mentioned the connection between your professional responsibilities in developing a business. Talk about those early mentors and how you made those connections. Because one of the questions I get a lot is, how do I develop a mentor network? What are the steps I need to take? How did you do it? How did it happen?
Yeah. So, part of it is, some of it is just being in the right place at the right time, and also knowing how to reach out to people. And that my view is that every interaction that I have is with a potential mentor. And that's why one of the things at NRP and one of the things we're talking about today is the informalness of that mentorship. And so I mentioned Bobby Goldberg, for example. Bobby Goldberg was a family friend. He was someone that my father had grown up with. But what's important about that is that I felt that from the time that I was a child, whether it was over his house at a dinner or whatever it was, I was always observing him. I knew that he was a president of a bank. I knew that I wanted to go into business. And so when I was a youth or a teen or a college student, I was like a sponge, just trying to listen to everything that I could. I mean, when you really look at my mentors, it starts with my father, and my father being a businessman, and me wanting to sort of follow in those.
I've met your father, so I know what you're talking about. I have met your father.
But just being around that has really was beneficial to me, to watch the way that he carried himself in business, in the community, and the way that he balanced between being a businessman and also giving back to the community. So I would say that I started with a real leg up, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, and I'm very humbled by that. But it also exposed me to people in the community that may not have had that exposure before. But what's interesting, Harlan, and because we have so many listeners and they say, well, how can I do that? I didn't grow up in a family like that. It's really seeking out and saying, what do I want to be when 10 years from now? And how do I want to advance my career? And so who are some people that I look to that I really would like to be like? And then saying, that's who I want to follow. That's who I want to model. I've got an interesting story for you that I love to share and I love to tell. So there's someone in town who I know you know, and many people on the call here may know this individual, but his name is Chuck Ratner. Chuck, to this day, has no idea that he's had an incredible impact on my life and as a mentor. We're friends. He knows who I am now, fast forwarding years ahead. But Chuck has this incredible gift. He was the president and CEO of Forest City. And he has an incredible gift for speaking. He can speak to a crowd, whether it's related to business or philanthropy, and people are just captivated by every word that he says. So at a young age, when I moved back to Cleveland in 1992, I was a young kid working at the Townsend Group, but I would go to meetings, whether it was professional or community related, and I would go and listen to Chuck and be in awe at the way that he spoke. But I would also say, how can I do that one day? How can I learn from him? But when I'm going to meetings and hearing him speak, how can I one day be as articulate as he is? And I would watch him walk up to a podium with a stack full of notes. And then as he got up there to speak, he never looked down once. It was just an amazing gift and an amazing talent.
Awesome.
I never knew how he did it. So what did I do? I went up to the podium afterwards to see what was on his notes. And it was that type of learning, taking that upon myself. And so one of the things that is important for people to understand is he was my mentor, but he never even knew that he was mentoring me. And it's that type of informal mentorship that I think is really important for people to understand. You don't always have to go up to a person and say, will you be my mentor? I feel that I'm going through life with hundreds, if not thousands of mentors, because I'm pulling little bits and pieces from people that I think will help shape me as an individual, as a leader, as a business person, as a community leader.
It's a great point, and it was kind of a lead into the next question, which is centered around the definition of mentorship. Well, what does it really mean? And it could take many different forms, from structured mentorship through a program, right? Or informal mentorship where you reach out to somebody, or what I would call unsponsored mentorship, like you just described that great story with Chuck Ratner. So this kind of model has affected you, obviously, and impacted you, the various different models of mentorship over your career. What are the kinds of programs that you work on in a work setting? You know, if you were going to advise someone that's in an organization, big or small, you know, how to make that first connection. What advice would you have to our listeners?
You know, and that's a great question, because one of the things that really got us set on this path of moments that matter and talking about mentorship is that that exact question. We wanted to, we had started a formal mentorship program, and it was very frustrating because people would sign up, they would say, I want to be a mentor, or I want to be a mentee, and you do your best to match them up. And it was very, very forced. And so that's why we switched to this informal model of really talking about having discussions like this about what a mentor is, what a mentor means, what the responsibility of mentoring is, and what the responsibility of being a mentee is, and how you change your mindset. You know, I read a lot of books, and Carol Dweck is one of the authors that I quote a lot from the book Mindset. And the way that you can shift your mindset on something to have a growth mindset. And so I look at mentorship in that same way. It's having a growth mindset. It's saying, what do I want to get from a mentor? Who can I get that from? And then approaching that person and just having a, sometimes it's appropriate to say, will you mentor me? And sometimes it's appropriate just to have a conversation and reach out and say, hey, can we talk about how I can become better at this? The word mentor might not ever come about, but you're truly looking at that person as a mentor. A lot of times, Harlan, you'll look at people and you'll say, wow, that person's super busy. There's no way that they will have a conversation with me. You'd be surprised. I mean, in this world of, it was a lot harder, I think, for older folks like us, right? So we grew up in an environment when there were a lot of formalities, but with the internet, with LinkedIn, with Facebook,
Absolutely.
With email, the ability for people to reach me is simple. I make myself accessible, and I feel the same way. When there's someone that I want to meet with, I'll just shoot them a note, and I'll actually think about it. What's the right way for this individual? Do I get nervous? Absolutely. I'm human. I think everyone gets a little bit nervous when they're thinking about approaching somebody that they don't know. But the other thing to think about is the way, and why I love telling the story about Chuck Ratner, is that I never approached him. I learned a tremendous amount and gained an incredible amount of confidence. Just from a distance, just from watching. You know, it's that mindset. You know, there's a book out there. It's called The Ethics of Our Father, and one of the things in it asks is who is wise, and who is wise is a person that learns from every person, and that's what I've adopted for myself is learning from every person.
So this may be a good time to introduce a couple other people that can add some different perspectives to the conversation in terms of some specifically structured mentoring programs, and one that
you're moving too quick there, Harlan. You are moving too quick. You are not letting me ask you about some of your mentors.
Yeah, okay. Well, go ahead.
I would love to ask you. I'd love to ask you about your mentors, because in the conversations that we have, we share a lot of the same philosophies on this, and I'd love to hear from you about how that shaped your life. And when we heard your bio from Dean Kahn, just such a varied background. If you could share how in each one of those cases you've experienced different mentors that have brought you to the next level in your career.
Yeah, happy to, David, and I think both of us during this talk are going to share stories that reinforce the importance of these informal and formal mentorships. I had a little bit of an advantage early on, obviously, from my parents, who were both pretty self-driven people. My mom never went to college, but she started her own business in our neighborhood, selling our old clothes, really. She started a consignment shop. And all the kids worked for my mom. You know, if you can work for my mom, you can work for anybody. That's number one. She was incredibly driven and taught me at a very young age the ins and outs of running a small business. And My dad was actually a weatherman for the National Weather Service. A lot of people don't know that. And then he became a businessman later on in his career, but good examples there. And then, I wanted to go to college where I wanted to go, and we didn't have the resources. So I was able to get a scholarship through the Navy to pay for it. And that whole environment, being a military officer and having that structure and the discipline is a form of mentorship. I had many mentors, many folks that I could bounce things off of and would give guidance. And over my 10 years, I can't even name all the mentors I had. I will mention one specifically was the captain of the ship that I was on, who unfortunately passed away from cancer in his early 60s. And I thought about him the other day because we were on the bridge of a ship in the middle of the night, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and he was thinking about my next duty station. Think about what that means. I'm in the middle of the ocean. We're in a combat situation, and he wanted to have a conversation about what I was going to do next. Just incredible. And that power of that conversation, we didn't solve anything that day, but the fact that he was thinking about it is something that, as a mentor, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it has an amazing influence over you. So that's one example. And then after I left the military and became a public defender, an assistant public defender, it's where I met my wife and learned about life and what happens in urban environments every day, and working for folks who are indigent and experiencing life with a completely different prism than the military. Those experiences are part of where I am today, and I wouldn't be sitting here without you. And the mentoring on both sides of those extremely different challenges was constant. And it was a combination of what you said. It was partly structured, but a lot of informal observation of people, judges, lawyers who handled themselves a certain way. And I've always been, pretty much a sponge in being able to look at folks like that, as you just illustrated in your stories, and being able to pick out the things that you want to emulate. So that is the power. That is the power of mentoring.
When you mention that, one of the things that I talk an awful lot about is like you said, picking out those things that you want to emulate, picking out those things that really you're fascinated by that individual. But as you get to know some people that are your mentors, you realize that they're human, and you realize that they have faults as well. And it doesn't mean that that person no longer becomes your mentor. It just means that that they're human and not everybody's perfect, and that you can take the good and you can shed the bad and create your own person that you can become a stronger individual as a result of. And that's something that over the years is something that I really had to learn to process and to understand as, these people that were sort of icons of, in
So
my
true.
eye, you begin to see that they have faults as well. And it's no different than, I talk about characters from the Bible. That's why, they can be mentors, and they can help you learn that not everyone's perfect. David and Bathsheba, Moses striking a rock versus speaking to the rock. They all had faults. And I think that's sort of the purpose, whether it's the Quran, whether it's the New Testament, whether it's the Old Testament, those ways of looking at people and then shaping your own career and your own who you are is extremely helpful.
And the point you just made about vulnerability and mentorship, and the best mentors I have kind of took themselves off of that perch, right? That iconic perch where you think, I can't talk to the captain of the ship. I'm just an ensign. I think the folks that can lower themselves off that pedestal and show their vulnerability because they remember what it was like to be you, right? Absolutely. And those are the most effective mentors in my life, the folks that made that connection. We try to do it. And I think most mentors, if you approach them, or potential mentors, if you approach them, are going to make the time for you if they're the kind of individuals that you seek guidance from. The other point that I'll make, and I still, I know we're talking as if this is past tense, but both of us know that this is current. I mean, I have mentors now that I still talk to and count on all the time to bounce things off of. I talked to one this morning, actually, who doesn't even know he's a mentor. He doesn't know it. And I'm not going to tell him. You know, on some level, he probably knows it. But that whole, you know, concept of self-improvement, self-awareness that you can only get from certain interactions, it's part of personal and professional growth.
Yeah, if you could talk a little bit about humility too. I think that that's something that is incredibly important. It's something that I look for in people that I look up to as leaders. It's that sense of humility. And I think that sense of humility also goes with a sense of responsibility. You asked me, how can people approach me? And it's what you had just said. I don't forget where I came from, and I don't forget how difficult it was on this path, and that I need to make time out of my day for people that are on that same path and that same journey.
Yeah, it's incredibly important. And sometimes there's a little bit of a conflict because, you know, folks in positions of authority and positions of responsibility, they feel the weight of those responsibilities, and they have a lot of activities and a very busy schedules. And I think you're absolutely right, though, to show vulnerability, to recognize your place in the world, and be in touch with who you are, and deal with that conflict, because both of us are representing our organizations, right? And part of that involves projecting strength and projecting success because we have so much passion for what we do. But most folks can see underneath and make a sense as to whether you have that inner humility and you're grounded. And I think ultimately the closer you are to that, the more often you realize you're not too big for your britches. I think that also projects a strength and an openness to learn. And in education, we're all about lifelong learning. And I count on some of those mentors to keep me balanced if they think that I'm swaying one way too much to the right or to the left. So I'm in 100% agreement with you. The humility piece, the self-awareness piece. If you're going to be a good mentor to others, that has to be a strong part of who you are.
You know, we talked about the mindset of having that, you know, shifting the mindset in NRP. And I apologize for having cut you off earlier, but the mindset that you've created at CSU, and you wanted to bring some other folks into the conversation because it's so critical, running an organization like you do with so many people and trying to give people pathways and avenues to mentors. Maybe it's a good time to pivot to introduce some of those folks.
So let me go ahead and tee it up a little bit, David, by saying that we are about educating students and graduating students into successful careers. It's what we do here. It's our prime business. And one of the things if not the chief component, one of the chief components is how we get students through, what kind of skills they have on the other end. There's nothing more troubling to us as leaders of academic institutions when students don't make it through. And we've been studying this for a long time, why students don't make it, why they drop out, what are the obstacles to success. And we have some successful models out there. And I'll give you an example. One of them is student athletes, and they succeed at nationally a little bit of a higher rate than students across the board. Why? And the answer is not that complicated. They're cohorted. They approach things together. They develop bonds amongst themselves. In addition to bonds they develop across campus with students, faculty, and staff. And that is a form of mentorship, and it's a form of coaching. And what I really have learned in my 20 plus years in higher education is that we have to form that connective tissue with students early on, more than ever. And how do we do that? So I was in my early days, I think I hadn't even started here at Cleveland State, and I went around to some local high schools and was gathering information, learning about Cleveland. And I went out to Ted Ginn Senior High School out in Cleveland, and I met a principal there who I'm going to introduce in a minute. And they have a unique model of mentoring that's really, I would call, intrusive. And it develops that connective tissue very early on really tells students that we're there for you. It encourages them, it sets expectations, but it was something I felt so strongly about that I think I wanted to take parts of that model and build it here at Cleveland State, and we've tried to do that. So let me go ahead, if I may, David, and introduce a couple folks that I think can share some interesting insights into how we're approaching mentoring to scale, at least we're trying to do to scale at Cleveland State, and introduce Nick Petty, one of our chief advisors and coaches. And Nick was that principal at that high school I visited, and it was like one of those infomercials you see, late at night when you can't sleep. I don't know if remember was the guy who has the glue, or he's putting glue on a roof, and he says, "I like the company so much. I like the product so much. I bought the company." Well, I like the product so much, I recruited Nick to Cleveland State. Nick, can you say hi? Are you out there? Where are you?
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing? How's everybody doing today? Thanks for having me on the call.
Doing great.
Was a K-12 principal at Gann Academy, and met President Sands, and he wanted me to bring what I was doing to scale here at Cleveland State University. Basically, on a simple model, we were the link between home and school. So we were another person in a student's life who cared about them other than their immediate family. So fast forward to Cleveland State, developed a graduation coaching model, and I'll introduce the coaches here in a second, but it's basically, when you talk about mentoring, you're talking about fulfilling a void that someone has in their life. That's what we're talking about. And everything that's been said on this call is pinpoint accurate. You learn from a distance, you emulate your growth mindset, but at our level that we're dealing with now, we're fulfilling a void. And we have to be careful, it can't be forced when we're entering a student's life, because the wounds that they might have are not as visible or as obvious. So we use a graduation coaching model where we touch base with students in 6 or 7 different areas every time we get on with them. Well, on Zoom with them now, or some in person. And we just make sure that we understand that, we've all had this struggle before, and we're here to help you as mentors. It's rapidly developed into a mentorship program, which I am definitely excited about. And we continue to have great success, I believe, because of our relationships that we're building with students. Just our own personal experience. When I met with President Sands the first time, not too many people know this, but I told President Sands I had just been recruited to Ohio State by Urban Meyer. So President Sands, after listening to me, he told me, and I'll never forget this, he was like, that role that he wants you to do is too small for you. I have a bigger role from you. From right there, I was sold, and that's the type of stuff that you need from people in your life if you're going.
That's the last time anybody will ever. I can now say that I beat Urban Meyer at something.
Yeah, you out recruited Urban Meyer. You out recruited Urban Meyer. Yeah, and right there on the spot, he gave me some specific steps that he wanted me to follow. And then I started everything is so right. You look at people and you grow and you learn. Another good mentor of mine, Howard Lewis, who works closely with Cleveland State. And he told me, he said, people come into your life for 3 reasons: a lifetime, a reason, or a season. So if we're going to be mentors, you have to take on that lifetime mindset that you're going to always be there for them through thick and thin. So I have Leah Grill, I have Jasmine Hawkins as 2 graduation coaches. And they came in with me, I hired them, and I hired them because they both had a mentor in their life to help them get to the point they're at. So that was one of my requirements. And then I'm going to introduce Mrs. Stephanie Rodriguez, who runs the Key Bank Scholars here, and she mentors every student that walks through the door at Cleveland State University from Cleveland School. So Leah, if you just say a few words and just what your typical day looks like and the things you follow, everything you touch with on a student, that'd be perfect.
Yes, so as Nick said, it really it has to be genuine. And with these students, you're not really going to get them to open up to you the first time you talk to them. So you have to be really patient